Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 39 of the Clutch Dump. I am one technical difficulty away from using this computer as Bo Jackson once used a baseball bat over his knee, in the sense that it becomes two separate entities after I'm done with it. Ladies and gentlemen, you would not be able to tell that today was a great day for me as a race fan with how Ben and I have spent literally an hour attempting to figure out how to clear my Chrome cache.
Not an hour, it's like 20 minutes.
I got a Peroni supporting Aston Martin. I'm wearing green, and I'm wearing an Alonso hat, so obviously you know how my day was.
We're starting it already.
20 years of trying, 20 years.
And Senna sprints away. Banana.
Rossi's right in behind Lorenzo.
The 101st Indianapolis 500 is won by Takuma Sato. Dale Earnhardt will come to the caution flag to win the Daytona 500.
Oh my God.
That all being said, I'm having a brain fart as I'm kicking at the label of my beer strenuously. Make sure to follow us on all podcasting platforms, whether or not that is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Pandora, Google Podcast, and whatever else there is out there in the backwoods of West Virginia. And also make sure to follow us and turn on that notification bell on YouTube. We are trying to grow our presence there. Can we hit 10 subscribers by the end of the week? Woot! But that all being said, we have a hard-hitting but small episode in terms of the amount of topics. We're really talking about three main things, maybe four, but those being getting a phone call. Formula One practice. We have NASCAR. We have IMSA controversy, and more. And that is all coming up on this episode of the Clutch Dump. Ben, please take this mess from me.
I will absolutely take whatever I can from whatever that was. So we have, well, I didn't have NASCAR in the notes, but well, it's me.
I just realized that they're showing up in Vegas, so
it's me, so I wouldn't.
Also, what does your profile acronym stand for? I want to know.
I will end this podcast if you fangirl Alonso too much. I just felt like typing it all out was a bit much, so we went.
He did whittle. We just hit the quitty.
That applies, by the way.
First 3 minutes. Oh, I'm trying. Now my goal is to try. We're going to see what your threshold is.
Nick no longer wants to have a podcast. But we do have Formula One practice. We have actual season starting, as opposed to the last time we said it started, and the time before that we said it started.
This is day one of the Formula One 2023 season. So
this is true.
Come on in, take a seat.
It started here. I found motorcycle news because I can't get through an episode without talking about my two-wheeled thingies. We have, some small World Endurance Championship news and some large IMSA news. I'm going to start off with Isle of Man while Nick, hint, hint, wink, wink, figures out whatever the heck it is he wants to talk about for NASCAR.
Was I supposed to be? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, because I don't know what we're talking about, so that's all you. So, for motorcycles, we are not talking about World Superbike or Moto America or MotoGP. We are talking about the Isle of Man, and it has been announced that Michael Dunlop, yes, that Dunlop, will continue his highly successful partnership with Hawk Racing for 2023. However, for the first time in 10 years, Michael Dunlop will be running on a Honda. He is running for the 2023 TT on a... I need to get this right. There's too many R's. CBR 1000 RR-R Fire, which has an R blade. Thank you.
I think I might have just had a stroke if I hadn't had one already.
Thank you, Honda. I think the problem is when they were writing down the name, they were on a phone call and they had bad service, and they were like, "What did you say?" R, and they just kept saying R, and they just kept writing it down. So yes, CBR 1000 RR-R Fireblade. Which is a fantastic looking bike. There will be pictures up of it here. So should be interesting to see. I'm rather surprised by this move as Dunlop ran on a... Gosh, I'm going to get this wrong. I'm going to say Suzuki. I'll put it on the screen if I was wrong because he probably rode a Honda or a Yamaha.
Probably.
Sorry. He probably rode a Yamaha. But I'm rather surprised by this because the past, 2, 3, 4 winners have all been on BMWs on S1000 RRs, and now last year they were on an M1000 RR. So this year I would be surprised if the Honda can keep up with them. I'm going to jump over to World Endurance Championship real quick while Nick finishes sneezing and figures out his NASCAR news.
I knew how to mute the mic, though, so I'm really proud of myself.
And we have some very pretty news, and that is that Hertz Team Jota has unveiled their livery for their Porsche 963.
Oh, yeah.
For the 2023 24 Hours
and the sponsor video of the year so far goes to Tom Brady trying to sim race a 911 RSR.
It's horrible. It is a horrible video. I'm saddened that I wasted a minute and a half of my life watching it. But
what else would you have done?
Glorious look at motorcycles. But outstanding livery, gold and white. Big sponsors, obviously Hertz and Singer, as in the company that builds the really cool air-cooled 911 resto mods, and Brady, which is Tom Brady's clothing
line. Yeah.
So yeah, pretty cool to see. Gorgeous looking
Which
livery.
it's funny because Brady was talking about how his philosophy for the sponsorship was, well, Brady as a brand is all about sportiness, and Porsche is sporty. So there we go. And it's
Perfect.
like you really thought about that one hard. That was a board member meeting where he's like, guys, I have an idea. Brady is sporty. Let's sponsor sports.
Nothing faster than race cars. So, tell me you don't follow racing without telling me you don't follow racing.
Exactly.
I mean, so far it is, I will concede, it is the best looking livery. I think it's a sensational livery. I think, unfortunately, the gold needs to be a little bit more metallic-y, like radiant. It's a very muted kind of. You know, I kind of like it. I like that it blends very well with the white. So I just generally I think that Nick is wrong with everything. No, I do think it's a very good livery. We have to see what all the other liveries end up being. We've seen the Cadillacs, and that's about it. And the Toyotas will probably do red and white.
7 minutes in.
Beer's done?
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, for them it's been 7 minutes. For us, it's been like 45.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So
I got NASCAR.
Nick has NASCAR news. He's found NASCAR news. Nick, what is happening in the world of left turns?
The great thing is Twitter is really good for coming up with NASCAR news off the fly.
Really quick.
So we have a couple bits of noteworthy information. First of all, if you're going to say, what the hell is going on in NASCAR? Well, this weekend there at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, what the hell? I just bookmarked 6 things related to NASCAR, and it's not showing up in my Twitter.
Welcome to Google phones.
Is that a consistent problem?
I don't know. I don't have Twitter.
No, that's fair. So basically, here's the big news. Chase Elliott is not racing because he got in a snowmobile accident. And Josh Berry is going to be driving the number 9 Hendrick Motorsports car in the stead of Chase Elliott. That race is Sunday. And then Chandler Smith qualified today and got pole in the Xfinity Series race for Vegas, and Kyle Busch got pole in Vegas in the Truck Series. So obviously Truck Series and Xfinity races tomorrow, and then we have Sunday being the Cup Series race at Las Vegas. Funny meme that, NASCAR's got to have memes somehow.
Sure.
And for anybody that's played What's the Game? Force Unleashed.
You know
when Force Unleashed, when Starkiller's on his knees and he shouts at Vader, "You promised to stay away," and it's Vader and he goes, "I lied." It was like the Truck Series drivers to Kyle Busch, and it's like, "You promised to stay away," and then Kyle Busch is just like, "I lied." So that is your little bit of NASCAR news. There's not a lot, but pertinent news. Obviously, Chase Elliott. That's pretty big deal.
Does that conclude NASCAR? Is that all the left turns we have for this evening?
It was literally just qualifying. So,
well, in that case, we're going to jump into some IMSA drama before Nick goes on a Fernando Alonso rant.
Well, hold on. Do you want to do F1 first? Having nothing to do with Alonso, but just mainly because IMSA, I think, is going to be more of a conversation topic, so we can do that last, maybe?
I'm down for that. We can do that.
Awesome.
Now, Formula One. We're all familiar with Formula One. We all love Formula One.
So.
It's our favorite open-wheeled sport. I guess technically motorcycle racing is an open-wheeled sport, so it's like my fifth favorite open-wheeled sport.
There's fairings on motorcycles. That counts as it doesn't count.
Well, but there's like the brake thingies on F1 cars now, so you know. Whatever. Anyway, Formula One. We have had practice 1 and 2 of round 1, which is exciting because while we did have testing, which was very nice because we got to see actual cars on track and get kind of a basic, somewhat gist of where everyone sits. Now we have an actual idea of where everyone's going to stack up, and there are some surprises, some not surprises, and some more surprises.
And some people that wandered out of the woods after being Lewis Hamilton fans and then Max Verstappen fans, and now they're Alonso fans because they just follow whoever's successful.
I refuse to be an Alonso fan as long as you were one. So that there is one person who is not an Alonso fan. So as soon as Nick starts not liking Alonso, I'll hop on that hype train.
Man, I hate Alonso.
Same. Well, speaking of Fernando Alonso, I will run through your FP1 and FP2 results. So, practice 1, Sergio Perez, followed by 1, Fernando Alonso, followed by Verstappen, Norris 4th, Leclerc 5th, Stroll 6th. We'll get to Lance Stroll in a bit. We do have some Stroll drama. Kevin Magnussen, K-Mag, putting in a good result for FP1 in 7th.
J-Bone.
Zhou and Bottas 8th and 9th. Hamilton 10th. Russell 11th. This is where I started to have concern for the Mercedes. Sadly, it looks like they will be, of the top 3 teams, they will be in that number 3 spot. Rough. Oscar Piastri 12th. Sonoda 13th, Hulkenberg 14th, Ocon 15th, De Vries 16th, Gasly 17th, Logan Sargent doing it for America in P18, followed by Alex Albon, and then Carlos Sainz, who I believe was running, he spun for starters. And then also he was running a bit more of a race simulation there.
It was a weird spin.
It was a very high speed spin.
Before we move on to FP2, there's a meme where it was like Logan Sargent fighting for freedom and P19, and it was like bombs going off in the American flag and George Washington. I was just like, I really hope he's not fighting for P19.
That's what he's gonna do. So, free practice 2. This is when my heart sank.
Maybe we should do it in ascending order.
Not because I don't like the guy, right? I like him. I got nothing wrong with him.
It's kind of hard to tell.
Is that my co-host really likes him? Therefore,
you might go as far to call him a childhood hero.
I know that from this moment until December, these Formula One podcasts are just going to be a bit more rough, assuming that this is accurate.
The great thing is I'm on the hook for Ben's therapy when he inevitably goes to hurt himself over the fact that I talk about Alonso too much.
Yes. But starting at the top, P1 for free practice 2, Fernando Alonso. We could just talk about this now. It makes no sense.
No,
I don't know why.
I was going to let it fester. I was going to let it get
I just want to get it. I'm just going to rip off the Band-Aid. I want to get it over with. It is gosh dang impressive that a 75-year-old can drive that fast.
Here's the thing. Go ahead.
The rule change from last year to this year was not that big. Not
Correct.
Too much changed. There were some aero changes and that sort of thing, but like nothing like 21 to 22.
Of course.
So the fact that Aston Martin has made this big of a step actually has me a bit curious if there's some Ferrari shenanigans going on in the background. In terms of
according to Sam Collins and Will Buxton, the Aston Martin was kind of a mix between Red Bull and Ferrari, and then some of their own tech. So I think that comment is unwarranted.
I think anything negative towards Aston Martin is warranted on this podcast.
Well, so there's a couple points I want to make on this particular topic.
Yes.
One of which is, I think Fernando. Well, okay, so people on social media have been like, is this the Fernando Alonso effect? Or is this just Aston Martin being really that good? I think it's a little bit of both. And then
More
I saw
so Aston
somebody
Martin
else
being that good.
Well, to be fair, in any car, any of them,
Right.
regardless of if you like him or not, he's been consistently a half second to a second quicker than what the car should in simulations run. So
Yeah.
if you take Alonso out of that car, granted, I know Stroll's injured, so I'm not going to compare him to that now. But let's look later in the season. And you and I both predicted that Alonso was almost going to have a clean sweep on Stroll in qualifying. So
Right.
that, Stroll theoretically should have every advantage with 3 seasons with the team and being the owner's son. If there was going to be a setup or a chassis change to benefit one or the other, it would be Stroll.
Right.
So, but I saw somebody post, and they're like, oh, Seb sacrificed the last few years of his career so Fernando could fly. And I was like, no disrespect. Like, seriously, none? And Seb's an incredible driver with a lot of experience. But
This is true.
he clearly did not have the motivation Fernando does in the latter parts of his career.
This is true.
Doesn't mean he was less skilled. He just wasn't as into
that's just
the
a fact.
day-to-day.
He's just,
right. Okay,
right.
well, now that you agree, I'm just going to say it blatantly. Seb was a late... I'm just kidding. But
Jesus. End call.
No, so here's the thing, though, is I think people are overriding and overlooking the fact that the role that Fernando inevitably had in the off-season, in the development of the car, granted, he didn't... Fernando's not responsible for what happened last year.
Right.
But if you look at where the car finished last year to where it's starting this year, that is a drastic jump.
Huge jump.
And I would say a large part of it is Fernando, but the biggest part is who Aston Martin's brought in. Dan Fallows from Red Bull. You have Mike Crack. Like all these A-list team principals, team engineers,
that's
mechanics,
something that Fernando
designers.
was talking about during
Well, right. When he signed the contract and people were like, why would you go to Aston Martin? His point was they're bringing in the big guns. They're spending
Aston
money
Martin is
to go
throwing
get the
the
talent.
money at it.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that's just kind of a social media comment where people are like, "Oh, well, Seb did all this," and it's like I like Seb, but unfortunately he had a part to play last year. But he's
not
the
Fernando.
New guard.
That's it. That's
right.
all it is.
Well, he's not Fernando, and he's not the new engineers,
and he's not the old Seb even.
No, well,
right.
That's true.
So.
Because here's the thing: is everybody like Seb for the last 5 years since Ferrari,
right.
6 years? He was a douche at Red Bull. Like he was a prick when they're like, "Hey, we love some team points. You've already clinched the championship. Maybe not fight Weber." And then he just takes out Weber. Like he's
man. I wonder where I've seen that at Red Bull before.
Well, no, I know. That's the thing is everybody's like, "Oh, I love Seb. Max is such a young, arrogant, blah blah." It's like, guys, Seb literally was the youngest race winner, then the youngest champion. Like
that was also Lewis, and that was also
exactly.
Fernando. Just heads up, champions. That's what they do. That's how it works.
That's what I was gonna say. And we can have a whole nother episode that's a conversation about it. But if you are a winner, at some point you are a prick. There is no way to avoid it in Formula One. In Formula One, but
this is true, and that's the thing. Like even if you, Christian Horner said it in Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
And this season, he's like, hey, if you're a winner, no one likes you. That's how it works.
Right.
That's how you have to have some of that if you want to win championships. You can't be, I hate to quote the title of episode 8, but nice guys finish last.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, for starters, brutal episode name. Sorry, Daniel Ricciardo, but it's true.
Another point I wanted to make is in terms of Bahrain, I think Fernando will be 3rd or 4th. I think the Red Bulls both are going to take 1st, unless there's a mechanical problem, which we did see last year.
Right.
I think Carlos is off the pace. Leclerc, we know on his day is faster.
Right.
He just doesn't. Not that he hasn't gotten the pace, just doesn't look comfortable. Like it looks like when he does get the pace out of the car, it is on the absolute limits, and he hasn't settled into the rhythm of the car.
I'm not putting my eggs in the Ferrari basket this year. I am generally a Ferrari fan, but also like I just don't care who drives.
No, for sure.
But like I don't care who drives for them. Like if it was Lance Stroll and Nikita Mazepin, I'd still be a Ferrari fan.
That is so disgusting. I want you to retract that.
I just like the brand. But I mean, with such a big management change this year, and with the new strategist and all that stuff, I don't expect them to be the polished team that they need to be to take it to Red Bull and maybe Aston Martin.
Fred Vasseur is gonna need at least a year to get comfortable, and who knows? Second half of the season, Ferrari could sweep. Like Ferrari could dominate the last part of the season. They could figure it out. Or not Aston Martin, Ferrari, but. It will be at the point where Red Bull's already gotten such an advantage. I definitely think Aston Martin, in terms of the car, is a better car than the Mercedes. Unfortunately, I think Mercedes will always split the Astons. If Fernando beats the Mercedes, Stroll's not going to be up there with him. It's going to be Alonso, then the Mercedes, then Stroll.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, here I have a comment here from George Russell. Towards the latter half of free practice 2, it was like 2 minutes left actually. He said that he was feeling some aerodynamic disturbance on the straight. If you follow Formula One in any detail on social media, you will have seen the FlowViz pictures from the side of the Mercedes and from the side of the Red Bull comparing the two. And the Red Bull, well, Adrian Newey apparently can build a dang good car. And it looks like the Mercedes sticking with this philosophy and this idea of the zero side pod. It just doesn't work. I'm so surprised that they stuck with it. You know, I was genuinely surprised that
I'm not surprised they're arrogant and they weren't going to say maybe we made a mistake.
Well, and here's the thing is, you know, something that I would like to remind the internet of is when Lewis Hamilton left McLaren to go to Mercedes, he was thought of as like everyone was like, are you nuts? Mercedes isn't good. They don't do anything. They just dominated the hybrid era. They were just good for that part. They figured out that car. And we are now in Red Bull's era. I hate to say that teams get eras, but like Red Bull has figured out this car. They just from the start last year, they got it right from the get-go, and all they have to do is just polish it and chip away at it and make it better every year. They don't have to start fresh, nothing like that. Whereas like Mercedes and even the lower teams, which I hate, it's weird comparing Mercedes to the lower teams, but Mercedes and the lower teams like Williams and Haas and even the midfield teams like Alpine and McLaren and Alpha, every year we're probably going to see major changes to the car, but every year at the car launch, everyone's like, oh, for the next 4 years or whatever it's going to be, you know, everyone's going to look at the Red Bull car and be like, oh, it looks like last year's car. And it's like, yeah, because last year's car won the championship or came second the championship or whatever. It worked. If it's not broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And the Mercedes is broke. And I think the current Mercedes lineup, Toto Wolff, is just used to a car that works and it just wins. And half of the Mercedes driver lineup is also used to that. So
that's the thing is I saw a commentary on how really aside from 2009 McLaren and even in the first half of 2009, after that they figured it out. Lewis has never been in a car that couldn't fight for a win. I want to read real quick a section from this Racer article because it talks about Aston Martin and kind of the expectations for this weekend, but I also want to transition into our conversation that we can have about Lance Stroll and kind of how we feel about that. So when Alonso was asked about kind of what his expectations were for qualifying and if he was targeting pole position, Alonso said, and I quote, "No, not at all. I'm not thinking that high. Actually, I don't know exactly what position will be good for us. After testing, we were thinking to be in Q3 with both cars and score as many points as possible in these first couple races and to not make mistakes." He continues, it's very easy to make mistakes, and it's not the same fighting for P12 or P14 as fighting for the top 5 positions because the pressure is different, the adrenaline is different, so there are a lot of things that we as a team have to grow together in this process. this last little bit. I expect that we will unfortunately make some mistakes, and I may make some mistakes. It's a completely new team, new procedures, the team as well. So we have to keep our feet on the ground, and the target has to be fighting for the championship in the long term, not this year. And then Lance Stroll basically said the car feels really good, it feels comfortable, it feels fast. And then obviously, as we all know, but Stroll was seen taking his right hand off the steering wheel during FP2 and clenching his fist, having had surgery on a broken wrist only 12 days ago. And unfortunately, in FP2, the engineers were telling him to sacrifice his line into turn 1 to then get a better exit out of turn 2 to make up time. And Lance said he couldn't do it. So, Ben, I'm going to pose this question to you after a brief one-sentence opinion of mine, which is, do you think Lance Stroll should race? And if so, why? If not, why? And my one-sentence opinion is I think it's unethical from the team's perspective to ask him to do this, especially after seeing the photos of him being helped out of the car, because it could cause a longer-term, more severe injury that puts him out for a portion of this season.
I mean, I completely agree with you on that. This is something that I was I was more surprised about this than I was Alonso P1. From testing, we knew Alonso was P1. We knew nothing about Stroll. All we knew about Stroll was broken.
Well, we knew that Drugovich was doing a decent enough job.
He was, I mean, for a dude who's never been in an F1 car, he's doing a decent enough job. But Stroll, I was so shocked to see him in a car. I mean, like, broken bones don't heal, like, they just don't heal that fast. That doesn't work that way. So like Nick said, he was asked to compromise a turn, and Lance was just like, no, I can't do that. So what was happening was when making right-hand turns, so it was his right hand that he had surgery on. So the problem is in an F1 car, if you've never seen the steering wheel of an F1 car, it's a rectangle and you've got thumb holes, right? So your thumbs sit in these holes and then your 4 fingers grip around the steering wheel. And the problem was when you turn, you not only push up with your outside hand, but pull down with your inside hand. So his problem was
on turn 1, you have to do almost complete lock. So he's twisting his arm.
It's a more than 90-degree turn. So his problem was he couldn't articulate his wrist and have the strength to pull it down that much. He had to put his left hand under the wheel and basically tip it over.
Which kudos to him for pushing through it, but unfortunately on the team side, you got to make the tough
good
call.
For him. So I mean, good on Stroll for trying to come back and do all that. I'll give it to him. Well done. I mean, that showed me a part of Stroll that I did not, assuming that it was Stroll's idea to come back.
True.
That shows me a part of Stroll that we have not seen before. Stroll is normally not super eager, not super driven to, push or anything like that because he does have the most secure seat in F1, essentially.
Right.
And I'm assuming it was part of Alonso doing so well in testing. And I think another thing he was worried about is Nick DeVries has created a new possibility in Formula One of reserve drivers can hop into a car and do well and then get a seat immediately the next season. So I'm assuming part of Stroll, and I'm assuming Stroll's manager, who I'm assuming is his dad, came up to him and was like, hey, heads up, if Drugovich does well, like if you miss 2 or 3 races and Drugovich is consistent in the points, and then you come back and you're not
14th.
like you're like, but not worse. I mean, just equal. If you're equal to Drugovich, everyone's going to be like, yeah, he's way younger. So we're going to put him in the car. So, I mean, I imagine there was part of that, but not only from multiple things. Number one, the team should have told Stroll to come in because they have the same camera views, if not more, than what we have on F1 TV and Sky Sports. And we saw Lance, for starters, on the pit straight, took both of his hands off the wheel.
I didn't even see both. I wasn't watching that intently.
He took both hands off the wheel, which is terrifying because it's an F1 car. And then taking the left hand and putting it under into turn 1. Now, if you're running free practice, that's one thing. But if you're going into turn 1 on race day, inevitably you're going to be 3 or 4 wide. What if he's turning left and if he's turning right and then suddenly has to make an adjustment left, he can't do that. Because his hand is underneath, and he can't turn left.
Going into turn 1, he's going to be he's going to be like we are in Forza lobbies, where you trail break, you kind of wait for everybody to get a gap because he doesn't want to be in the melee. Because if he is, and he, to your point, has to make an adjustment, he won't be able to. So Lance will be driving cautiously. First race of the season, McLaren has gremlins, Alpine looks slow, off the pace. Do you really want your second driver to be already driving cautiously when there's points on the table?
Right, this is the time when Aston Martin, even if they do, okay, we'll throw the scenario at the wall, okay? Assume Alonso finishes on the podium. Right. We'll throw it out in the world. Assume Alonso finishes on the podium.
Or even top 5. You need Stroll in the top 7.
You need Stroll in the top 7 or at least the top 10. You need some points there, right? Because Aston Martin, if not the best of the rest, they are, well, best of the rest would be, the top midfield team. So every point counts because
they're definitely fourth, but what they need to fight for is third ahead of Mercedes. And Mercedes will have both cars in the points. It's just a question of where. So Aston Martin needs a guaranteed double points finish almost every race. And if for the first race, Stroll isn't that guy, there's nothing wrong with sitting out. Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, is 2 weeks away, right? It's not 1 week after.
We don't have a race next week.
So then that would be 25 days since breaking his wrist, which is double the amount of recovery. But here's what happens. Let's say he does race distance, and he has bone bruising, or he has tendons that are strained or torn in that wrist. He's not racing Jeddah, and he certainly isn't racing whatever the hell is after it. And he's done more damage to it, let alone not just more damage. He may not have had it healed in the first place. If you're Lawrence Stroll, you gotta make the hard decision. Listen, call in Stoffel Vandoorne. I know Dragovich did testing. Call in Vandoorne because him and Alonso were teammates at McLaren. They already have a repertoire.
Right.
Have them in the cars, and just.
Well, and the thing is Aston Martin has 3 reserve drivers. Aston has 3 reserve drivers. So I mean, I see no reason why they shouldn't be like, Lance, sit this one out. It just won't work. Because here's the thing, is, okay, say if Stroll was in good condition, peak health, right? Could he get a 6th or 7th? Yes. Felipe Drugovich, Stoffel Vandoorne, maybe they're only grabbing a 9th or a 10th, right? But it's a 57-lap race. What happens if we get to lap 50, lap 45, whatever it is, and Stroll goes, hey, I physically can't hold the wheel going around corners now.
Is Stroll
I have to retire the car.
Stroll in perfect health can maybe get a 7th or a 6th, but he's not in perfect health. And even if he was in perfect health, let's be honest. I would say both the Mercedes finish ahead of him, and so let's say Alonso's ahead of both those Mercedes. That's already 7 cars in front of him. That's an 8th place.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's one of those things of, and here's the other thing. This is no secret. The whole paddock knows this. So it's going to be one of those things of the Mercedes and the Alpine and the McLarens in the Alphas. They're going to be like, hey, if you're going into a right-hander, dive bomb him. He won't be able to correct that or fight it. He has a weak link. He cannot hang in the right-handers. He can't do it. So even if he does finish the race, I think he's a liability, and not only to Aston Martin, but I think to everyone else. Is if he does get sideways, if the car steps out, if it understeers, if he locks up going into a turn, he can't correct. And it's one of those things of F1 drivers are athletes. If an athlete is hurt, they cannot perform.
I don't remember how they should.
So
I think it's 10 or 11, but it's the uphill right-hander that crests the hill. That's that long right-hander at speed. How are you going to do that if you're pushing? You're not even gripping the steering wheel. You're just pushing, and you have to hold and then unwind, and then another harder right-hander around 12 or 13 or whatever it is.
What if he's turning right? He's using his left hand to hold the wheel because his right hand can't hold it.
Right.
And then the car goes and spins around to the right, rotates clockwise.
He needs to counter, and he can't.
He can't correct left because the wheel is now off of his left hand, and his right hand he can't do anything with. So, I mean, here's the thing, is they have to announce before free practice 3 if they're going to put a stand-in driver in. Because anyone driving in the race has to do at least 1 practice session.
Right.
So if we get to free practice 3, which is at 5:30 in the morning, so I won't watch it, if we get to free practice 3 and Lance Stroll is in the car, you can safely assume that one Aston Martin is not getting points on Sunday.
Right. Unfortunately, because they really need both.
They really need both. And I think you have to assume that Lawrence Stroll and, the race engineers and the doctors and everything, that they are sitting in a boardroom. If they haven't already, they're sitting in a room and they're talking about it. And they're like, can he finish the race and can he finish the race in points? Right? Because, a Felipe Drugovich or a Van Dorn in 10th, I think if you can solidly assume that Drugovich or Van Dorn will finish 9th or 10th, put them in instead of Stroll. Give Stroll next weekend.
For sure.
Get Stroll to free practice 1 in Jeddah, see how he does. If he's still not doing well, pull Drugovich or Van Dorn again. This is one of those things of, like you said, it could end up being like a Marc Marquez type situation of it just gets worse because he keeps pushing. And then it's just one of those things of it's like, 3 years later, this is still a problem and you need surgery again and you have to miss half the season. This could be one of the biggest seasons for... This could be the biggest season for Aston Martin ever, which to be fair, they've had all, 2 seasons. But this could be a super big season for them. They have a star driver, a solid, I'll say this, Stroll is a solid second seat for Aston Martin. I think he'll consistently finish in points in this car, but I don't think he'll finish consistently points this weekend in this shape. Now, speaking of consistently in the points, McLaren, where were they? Free practice 1, Norris was 4th. But free practice 1, most people were on mediums, not softs. Free practice 2, Norris was 9th when everyone was on softs. So, it's one of those things of McLaren is not in good shape. Norris was talking about, I did see an interview with him, a little write-up of the upgrades that they brought today. What they have this weekend is in Norris's mind what they should have started testing with. Norris already thinks that they're a few days behind. He finished P9, which isn't horrible considering the rest of the cars on the grid.
Yeah, if you would have told me immediately after testing that they'd have a P9 and FP2 or FP1 and FP2, I'd be like, that's actually a surprise.
Right. So Norris finished P9. Now Piastri finished P15. Now here's the thing: if you are a rookie, expectations are for you from the team very high, from the fans pretty low. Especially with how stacked of a grid there is this season. But you have to think, Norris finished P9. In front of him was Gasly in an Alpine, was a broken Lance Stroll, Lewis Hamilton, which to be fair, he's in a Mercedes. They're kind of notorious for sandbagging. They could be faster tomorrow. And Nico Hülkenberg. You're in a McLaren and you're behind a Haas.
Well, to be fair, Lewis, you're in a Mercedes and you're behind a Haas, so...
Well, there is that. Which, to be fair, we'd like to clarify. It's free practice. It technically doesn't matter. But it was the first time we got to see all the cars at the exact same time at, quote, qualifying pace. So McLaren, I think, is in trouble this year. I think that McLaren will almost certainly finish unless McLaren finds, a magic button that they forgot to press. And come the 4th round of the season is the second fastest team. I think McLaren is finishing 5th, if not 6th, in the championship.
I was going to say, I think they finished behind Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston, Mercedes, Alpine, and maybe Alfa Romeo.
Maybe Alfa. Because the Alfas, if nothing else, looked super consistent. They weren't crazy fast. They weren't blowing anything out of the water. But free practice 1, Zhou 8th, Bottas 9th. Free practice 2, Zhou 10th, Bottas 12th. That is super consistent. If you can put your team, a midfield team, consistently in that 7th to 10th position, if you can put them right there every weekend, that is outstanding for a midfield team.
Is it adds up.
That is outstanding because, as we know, there's a couple teams that we get to the end, the Williams, and it looks like this year the AlphaTauris, that will end the year with all of 12 points or something like that, maybe,
Right.
if that. So if you're trying to beat the likes of McLaren and Haas and Williams and AlphaTauri, you want to be consistent. So I think Alfa Romeo is going to be a team to watch this year. I think they're going to be a super consistent midfield team. Now, I want to talk about one Oscar Piastri.
Please, Oscar Pastry.
Oscar Pastry and
Croissant.
Pierre Gasly. Because the question is, who made the right decision?
I think Gasly did.
I think Gasly absolutely did. Because Gasly finished free practice 2 in P7, which is higher than he ever would have finished in that AlphaTauri, considering that the AlphaTauris were 18th and 19th at the end of the day.
The AlphaTauris were 18th and trash.
So, Nick and I bet merchandise, merch on our...
I want to go see how our predictions are faring so far.
I was going to wait till qualifying to do that. I was going to stack it up after qualifying. But I know for a fact that I put Pierre Gasly as the biggest flop of the season, and so far that's not working out for me.
Hold on. Where was my biggest flop? Is that... well, mine was Pastry, so...
Well, there we go. But that means you might be right.
It also means I could be wrong.
So... no, because you put biggest flop is Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri so far is
flopping
15th compared to a 7th of Pierre Gasly.
Oh God, I cannot wait to ask for the outer shell hybrid Aston Martin jacket that's €250.
We're gonna be reasonable with our merch.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're just afraid you're gonna lose.
Absolutely. But and the other thing is Nick De Vries. I think Nick De Vries, his seat option, totally fine. The only way he could have done better is if he got that Alpine seat, which kind of was assumed not on the table for someone who was 27 and had no F1 experience. Yeah. Right, and had no F1 experience. So he did his test for Williams, so everyone assumed that Williams was going to...
Well, he was a Mercedes Academy driver, too. That's the other part of it.
He was a Mercedes Academy driver, so everyone assumed that he was going to get the Williams seat, and then he ended up getting the AlphaTauri seat, and the Williams finished 17th and 20th, and the AlphaTauris finished 18th and 19th in free practice, too. So I think he is in about as good of a seat as he was going to get. But, being in the AlphaTauri seat, I think it could be opportunity to move elsewhere. Heck, if Russell did it, anyone could do it, I suppose. Nick, do you have any more comments on free practices 1 and 2?
No, other than the fact that while I'm driving a vintage Porsche race car, I'm going to be trying to glance down at my phone to see where Alonso was in FP3. But, other than that, no.
Well, no. Qualifying, because qualifying is at 9 a.m.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my God! The car show is going to be started, and I'm just going to be streaming. I'm going to be like, huh? What? Oh!
Nick hasn't even gone.
This Rothman's Cup car? Sorry, I'm what?
Qualifying practice 3 is at 5:30.
No, I know,
morning.
but we're waking up at 6, so.
Oh, it ends at 6:30.
Yeah.
Qualifying is at 9. Very annoying. Qualifying and IndyCar practice are at the same time, so I'll have to have some dual screen action going on. But looks like Formula One could be a very spicy season. And I will make it a duty of mine as if I needed more things to do for this podcast. After at least after the races, maybe after qualifying, at least this qualifying, after the races kind of stack up where Nick and I's preseason predictions sit and look far who's buying merch. Because both of us, I know for a fact, put Alonso
as surprise podium and surprise
6th?
winner. Oh, and 6th in the drivers.
I put him as surprise winner, not surprise
I
podium.
put him as both.
You I put Nico Hulkenberg as my surprise podium.
Looks like I'm getting new merch, baby.
So dang it.
God, that's gotta suck because you hate Alonso, and then you're gonna have to pay your money is gonna go
I know,
towards
that I'm gonna have to
helping
give
Aston
him
Martin
money.
reach the cost cap.
He's going to fund
Yeah,
Alonso
no,
to
that's
be
a good
better.
point. Yeah, wow, thanks, Ben.
And, like, let's get one thing clear. It's not that I don't like Alonso. I just don't like you. That's the difference. It's very different. I have nothing wrong with Alonso. I'm sure he's a great guy. He's an outstanding driver. What he does is impressive. His fans, on the other hand, God.
You hate him so much
about
that you have a podcast with him.
I know. It's horrible. Nick, do we want to talk about
Yeah,
IMSA?
let's talk about the elephant in
and
the IMSA
some-
room.
Yes. I'll start it off. And if you recall from our Daytona 24 episode where we went over the race results,
and
we talked
our
about
episode
something
leading up to Daytona because we had qualifying that we talked about.
and leading up to Daytona about qualifying. We talked about something called a BOP, which is what you'll see if you read anything about this, and that is balance of performance. And that's basically what prevents there being a Mercedes era
Right.
in GT racing. So what they do is it's all based on weight and horsepower is what they do. And it's like if your car weighs X amount, you're allowed to have Y amount of horsepower and so on and so forth. And there's other things in there as far as tires and aero and that
Right.
sort of thing. But the elephant in the room was the Porsche. Now, Porsche dominated previously with the RSR. Very successful
GT3R
car.
is just the 991.2.
The previous GT 911
was the GT3R because FAF won the championship 2 years in a row. If you're talking about domination, it was the 991.2 GT3R, and then it was the 991.1 RSR.
GT3. Okay. So, those cars,
Yes.
super successful, very good, did very well.
Das Auto.
And then we got to qualify. Yes. Actually correct. They are a Volkswagen brand. That is correct. And then we got to Daytona qualifying, and the fastest Porsche was 2.84 seconds behind the pole-sitting Mercedes, which in racing, unless you're going around the Nürburgring or the Isle of Man, is a lifetime.
Yes.
It is days,
Like,
in
you
fact.
can get
It is
up,
actually...
let the dogs out, make yourself a cup of coffee, shower, get dressed, go to your 9 a.m. meeting, and then drive home, and then it's past.
And then the
Right,
Porsche
exactly.
crosses the line. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it was very surprising. And to be fair, I did bring this up. Hey, they're going to fix this by Sebring, is kind of the thing. It's the first race with the new regulations and the new cars. Something wasn't bound to work. And it was the balance of performance for the Porsche, so they're going to fix it. And what happened is Ryan Hardwick, am I
Yes.
pronouncing that
Yeah.
correct? Ryan Hardwick? So Ryan Hardwick has announced that he will make the switch to a WEC entry with Proton competition if IMSA does not address
Which,
his
for
balance
those of
of
y'all
performance issues.
who maybe watch casually, Ryan Hardwick drives the sexy, bright blue GT3 sponsored by First Form, and his co-driver is typically Jan Halen. And they've had success in years prior, but continue.
Yeah, basically what he said is, hey, I'm racing at Le Mans, and, you know, doing laps in this GT3R isn't helping me. It's not representative of what I'm going to drive. The balance performance isn't good. We're on the back leg. And what he said, basically, is he's not going to abandon all the races, but he's only going to do the endurance races for IMSA. And he had this whole long quote spiel that I copied over here. Basically, I'm excited to join WEC Grid, and then he is pulling back from what was a full season of GTD with Wright Motorsports Porsche, and he's only going to run the remaining IMSA endurance rounds because of what happened at the Rolex 24. And basically, he said there was a lot of finger pointing as to who was at fault for one brand being at such an extreme performance disadvantage compared to the rest of the GTD class. Personally, I do not care who is at fault. I do feel strongly that some changes need to be made. What took place during the race was a sad display of just how flawed the current IMSA BOP, Balanced Performance System, truly is. The product that we all put forward on track in Daytona was a disgrace to our fans, our manufacturers, our sponsors, our teams, and our drivers. The truth is the current BOP process has failed us all of us.
That's a pretty scathing review.
And then that is a very
That is
hard-hitting
a
review.
half
It wasn't
star
just,
on
hey,
Yelp.
this isn't working out. Right. So, and then IMSA, John Doonan, the IMSA president, responded with the following quotes. We are currently reviewing data gathered from January's Rolex 24 at Daytona, as well as a 2-day test last month at Sebring to establish the balance of performance for the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring. So IMSA obviously took this, I'm going to call it threat, but statement very seriously of, hey, not only are drivers upset, but drivers are walking. They're leaving our sport to go do something else because this isn't working for them. The balance of performance isn't there. Clearly something is wrong. So IMSA's looking into it, and hopefully it'll be fixed by Sebring. Nick Patty, our resident Porsche aficionado. Your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
So I made a TikTok addressing some of this, but the thing that I think people need to remember when it comes to balance of performance is it's never perfect. Balance of performance is never perfect or the same between race to race.
Trying to balance things.
It is a constant pursuit of balance, and what works at one track may not work at another track. What works on one car may not work on another car, even though the Porsches across the 991.2 and the 992, in terms of power, in terms of weight, are very similar. And so IMSA tried to penalize them in some way because of their dominance, but maybe they were different enough that the penalty did too much. I think Ryan Hardwick is taking this a little personally. Like, I think he's overreacting drastically because even when Porsche was at the front of the field, they were fighting for podiums. No disrespect to Ryan Hardwick. Y'all were never as fast as Faf. Like, so even if all the Porsches were competitive, you're still not winning. You're losing to Faf. And then even when Faf won Daytona, when they had that side-by-side in the final laps, it was Mathieu Jaminet and Vantor. Neither of those were the right Motorsports number 16 car. So I think.
Well, and I mean, and maybe it was one of those things of the right Motorsports car was hoping to, with this new car and with the new balance of performance,
but
to
here's
step
the
up
thing,
and
is if
go from a midfield team to a front
if
of the
anybody
pack.
has a place to complain, it would be Faf coming off the two-peat, coming in with a brand new car. It's not like Wright Motorsports was winning
and then finishing 10th.
And then because of BOP, they're no longer winning. They weren't winning prior to the BOP changes, and they're not winning now. It's just that the positions, instead of being top fives, you're now fighting for top tens, which, granted, those are still points. They're still playing to the championship. But I think, one, they need to be more understanding with the fact that it's never perfect. Although, and I want a job with IMSA, it's not like the teams didn't bring this to their attention after qualifying. We talked about it. We brought it up. IMSA teams, after qualifying for Daytona, were like, hey, this gap is way too large. The BOP is not working. And whoever's in charge of it, BOP at IMSA, obviously it's not IMSA as a whole, but whoever's in charge of the BOP said, no, we're confident we made the right choice. And what happened? Daytona happened.
This works.
Daytona was a good race, but it was not a good race for the reasons that the field was real close. It was just that you had two Acuras that were really close, and then you had a lot of Mercedes in the GT field. So that all being said,
with the
I feel like
Astons.
IMSA has a little bit of like, okay, we're working on it. That's great. But would it hurt to say we apologize for not taking it more seriously initially? I don't think it would hurt. And lastly, to him moving over to WEC, after this year, the RSR isn't being run, period, because ACO and IMSA are linking up in terms of their regulations. And so you're going to spend the money in the R&D for the next 10 months and maybe they win a few races. Okay, that's cool. But then next year, you got to deal with this car anyway, the 992 GT3R. So why not just spend this year learning the car, developing the car? Let's say IMSA fixes the regulations after Sebring. So Sebring is come and gone, but after Sebring, they fix it. And now all he has left is Petit Le Mans in terms of endurance racing. And Le Mans if they want to, but that's not an IMSA event. So you basically missed out an entire season of IMSA racing. Points, potential championship, potential wins, knowledge, experience with the car. Because Daytona and Sebring didn't go quite as well. To me, it's a very yes.
I think what he's doing, I get your point. Yes, that makes sense. But I think what he's doing is because he is racing Le Mans this year in an RSR.
But that's assuming that he couldn't get into Le Mans next year. He's acting as if, oh my God, I have to win Le Mans, which I'm not saying you should go into Le Mans not wanting to win. But if you are so concerned about it that the difference between the RSR and the R is going to like make or break.
Yeah, but Le Mans is one of those things where teams would give up the whole season to win Le Mans.
Sure, but why not do both? Why not do endurance races in WEC and do the IMSA calendar? Because not all of them are conflicting. And here's the other thing, is if you just said, where it's a confliction, I'm going to do WEC, that's fine. WEC runs like literally maybe 6 races the entire calendar year. And before Le Mans, they're running what, maybe 2, 3 at most? So what?
2 or 3. I think,
so you're going to sacrifice the whole IMSA regular season for that? I don't know. It's just weird, but
yeah, I mean, it is a bold move, if nothing else. It is a bold move to abandon a whole racing season after you've already started it, to jump to another one, to a different car, to a different team. And I'm less concerned with that as I am with the actual balance of performance,
no, I agree.
Which is something that we will be paying attention to come March 18th, when Sebring happens, which we will be watching. Sure. So we will have a
we'll probably have
a post-qualifying episode and a post-race episode.
Pre-race, and then you said, we're all on the same page.
All on the same page here. We're 39 episodes in. Also, we didn't do this on purpose, but I kind of like how we managed it to where we're gonna have an even episode 40 for our first F1 episode.
Not gonna lie, pretty hot.
I don't know how we planned that. We definitely did that
when we
on
founded
purpose.
This podcast
since
over a year
episode
ago.
1.
Yeah, we sat down in that coffee shop.
We were like episode 40. Yeah, that's why you got 3 episodes this week.
We're like crap.
Because this will go out tonight. Because this will go out tonight.
Last thing.
Balance.
Last thing. Oh, well, I'm sorry. No, it wasn't on balance of performance.
Yes.
So if you have a comment on that, you can go ahead and do it.
No, I was
just going to say in exactly 1 week we get V Supercars starting. Woot! So, yeah, make sure to look forward to. We got IndyCar this weekend. We got NASCAR this weekend. We got F1 this weekend. Next weekend,
we got World Superbike this weekend.
How did I forget?
Let's see. Hold up. I got my calendar. I got my calendar up. We have F1, F2, F3, World Superbike, NASCAR, and
there you go. And then next weekend we got some V8 Supercars, the 6th Gen Camaro. Let's go, baby.
And NASCAR.
Oh, the NASCAR's every weekend, baby.
Next weekend we have NASCAR, British Superbike, Moto America, Global Time Attack at COTA, which I'm going to, which I'm very excited about.
I'm going up to Funny Car
which
Chaos.
Nick can't go to. We have Supercars and we have NHRA. So should be very, very exciting. However, if you've made it this far, thank you for joining us in our little motorsports episode, which is basically just so that we can make room to talk about F1 and World Superbike on Monday. Thank you so much for listening. Whatever platform you're listening to this on, make sure you give us a follow or a subscription. Please leave a rating. Please leave a review. It helps us very much to grow the fan base. If you're watching this on YouTube, hi. Make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell. Make sure to like and share the video. Comment down below what you thought about it. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 39 of The Clutch Dump. We will see you next week for the first round of Formula One. See you then.